looking at the way things went over the weekend, is that, especially that Sunday game, is that one that you kind of just flush and say, or do you kind of
definitely don't want to take that and linger on it very long?
You know what I mean, though? You can kind of make too much out of one game in a
you
situation.
can.
Yeah. But sometimes you need that, yeah.
Well, when you're sitting in an airport in Denver till 2:30 in the morning and you get home at 6:30 a.m., yeah, you can tend to think about things. You got some time to think. But when you get up the next day, you got to move on. Obviously, a handful of things just didn't go well in one inning, but don't let it take away from the entirety of the weekend. There was a lot of really good there. With what guys are doing. Obviously, you see guys like Gavin getting really hot, and a handful of other guys pitching their butts off as well. So just, one of those ones you like. Don't linger too long on that one, but also it provides a lot of motivation to continue to work. So, I don't know, oddly enough, when you get punched in the face, you got to know how to respond to it. And that's what yesterday's practice was about, and that's what today's practice is going to be about. No doubt, just like we were sitting on the one of the plane rides on the way back, and it was bumpy at the start. And then as you climb up there, you're like, okay, now it's supposed to naturally smooth out. And then some more bumps come with it, and it smooths out again. So there's always going to be some bumps in the road. And it's, our ability to handle those things and adjust and continue to get better. I thought yesterday's practice, how we did it, each coach really getting involved and mixing in with different guys and just more communicating than ever before this season, especially around the midway point. I thought it was incredible, and honestly, I'm excited for this weekend, but I'm not going to get too ahead of ourselves right now. It's what we do at practice that's important.
Irvine's obviously crushing the ball. How would you describe their lineup?
Stable. They're very consistent with their approach. You look at any of the games, they're always putting up runs. They're getting guys on base. They got 76 hit by pitches this year already. So they're well grounded. They're balanced. Just a lot of solid options up and down the lineup. So you got to execute pitches. You got to make plays on defense. It's not like they're stealing a ton of bags up to this point, or bunting like they usually do. They have guys that smash the baseball. So and their pitching staff's done really well as well. So it'll be a great opportunity for a home series to go out and have two really good teams compete.
Just curious, can you kind of talk about from this past weekend what all did you like that you saw from the team, and maybe were there any things you saw where there was room for improvement that you guys have really kind of addressed this week in practice heading to UC Irvine?
No, it's just those finishing innings. I mean, the speaking directly to that one really rough inning. Well, we have some great at bats. Weber ties up the game with a homer. And we felt like we were in a really good spot. We get 2 outs, and all those runs happen with 2 outs. So it's, I felt our positioning was really good. They hit them where we weren't. But it was almost like every little thing that could happen. I mean, Caraway hit a ball, bounces off a guy's glove, hits off his foot, kicks in the air, and the center fielder's there to catch it.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And that was, it's going to be like that at the moment. And so when we were delayed for several hours at the airport, it's like, this is what's supposed to happen right now. Just when you think there's a little bit of adversity or whatever, you just pray on it and ask for it to pile on a little bit more so you can really soak it in. And but I thought our guys learned a lot about themselves, what they're capable of doing on offense. That response to after game 1 and scoring, 16 runs and breaking the school record in home runs. You see what they're capable of doing. First night we faced a guy who was throwing really well, locating and mixing pitches a ton, really only 30% heaters. And then how they adapted, instead of sitting out over the plate, they came in on us a lot too. And so that opened our eyes a little bit on how we need to handle that inside stuff a little bit more. But I saw guys looking for different opportunities, communicating even more. Again, the road trips, I love the amount of time that we get to spend with our guys over meals or sitting around the hotel lobby, film review, you name it. So we got to learn a lot about what we've done thus far. It's not just scouting your opponents, but it's also knowing what we've been doing and what we're capable of doing, and where we haven't even brought to light some of the areas that we can improve. We hype a lot on base running and presence on the bases, and you step back and look and like, holy smokes, man, like I don't think we've been as present on the bases as we should have been. And even some of our pitcher stuff, where are we trying to go with our stuff and are we executing? And so it's just kind of looking at our heat maps and our bullpen sessions where we throw in. It's like a guy who gets on the mound and just constantly throws out of the windup. I don't know many guys that throw a whole game out of the windup over and over and over. We need to do better out of the stretch, because that's where the most runs are scored, is when you're sitting in the stretch. You only can give up 1 run out of the windup, but you can give up 4 real quick out of the stretch. So just continuing to transform our guys a little bit and bring light to some of those areas.
How would you assess where the bullpen's at? You guys still kind of defining things there?
Yeah, a committee. Like, Hutch and Dougie came in at the end of one game, and they kept, swapping in new hitters. They didn't want righties to face Hutch, and they didn't want lefties to face Doug because he's got a high whiff on his slider, and Hutch gets a ton of ground balls. They've both been good to both, but really, they kept mixing it up on us. So it's seeing what the other team has and putting the right guys in the right spots to succeed. I thought Palmer has continued to get better and better and show big improvement. He threw 2 really good innings, and Munt to go out and punch out 2 guys, and then just found a little bit of uncertainty there with where it was going. It's some of those things are going to happen, but I do like overall how they're pouring into each other, and like even Wyatt Queen, the stuff he's bringing to the table with his big pitch mix. He's developing a cutter right now too, and if he has as much confidence in his stuff as we all do in his stuff, that guy's going to pitch for a really long time. So I wouldn't say there's any one particular person that's in that role. I think it's comprehensive. All of us can do it together.
Well, you heard me say closer, but I just meant like the bullpen in general. Just because
every inning's a close inning. It's like Dora always hates it when guys talk about, it's a shutdown inning. We just scored some runs. You got to go out. Every inning's like that. And so if you're coming in the 6th and that's your job is to close that inning, But obviously it's always a little more difficult based on experience trying to come in and do it in the 9th when you're on the road and the other, they're the last ones to get to hit. If you got the lead, you got to come in and finish the job. But the goal is to have a big enough lead that there's not as much pressure in those situations, but also when it is a tight game, to have guys in the game that aren't worried about that, who just go out and execute. They have a great defense behind them.
You brought up Leif, but he's really been coming along. Had a good outing Tuesday against Washington as well. Just kind of, what's it been like to kind of see him take those next steps and be a guy you can really lean on?
That's a huge reason why you coach, and watch guys continue to grow. It's like seeing the alumni, the guys that come back that you've known for years, and then now they're, married and they kids on the way, and they're starting their own careers and stuff. It's just fun to watch development. Guys to take big jumps, like what Ethan Talt has done. From what he was, like who he was as a person his freshman year to who he is right now as a junior, it's just been incredible to watch. And so, it puts a smile on your face, and it brings like real joy for us as coaches and for his teammates, and even him, how he walks around. He's not a super tall guy, but he walks around like he's 6'5" right now, being the leadoff hitter for the Beavs. Something that he's worked incredibly hard to do.
You kind of breathe a sigh of relief with Nelson that he's okay and coming back.
He's a big, strong boy. I knew he was going to be all right. He just excited to watch him go out and take the bump on Friday again. It's not like we're going to go out there and say, here's 140 pitches, roll at him, but just had a little bump, and he's all right. So
sounds like he's hitting the weight room too hard, man. He's trying to buff up too much.
It gets aggressive in there, If you're gonna make gains, you gotta get after it sometimes, and every now and then you run into stuff.
Do you expect him to maybe? He always has so much energy when he's on the mound, but when you're coming off an injury like that, he's wanting to get back out there. Do you sense he may come with a little extra juice, this Friday especially a team against UC Irvine, and how do you kind of maybe reel that back maybe a little bit so he doesn't potentially?
I will not be reeling him back. I will be encouraging that. I love when he pitches with emotion and that fire in his belly. So if he doesn't have that, that's when I go, hey, Dor, go ahead and head on out there and throw in a little jab real quick. But I'm sure he's going to be excited. Our communication over this last weekend, having not been able to take the ball in his hand, again, those are big moments. He's like, this struck me again as a good wake-up call. Like, life can be quick, and you never know what's going to happen. And not being on the field, especially as you're an older guy, like that, it hurts a little bit. And so you want to get back out there. So I don't anticipate him going out with anything short of, his hair on fire and ready to get some outs.
What did you see from?
Oh, go ahead.
What did you see from Eric on Friday? And obviously you started on last year, but did you feel like it maybe a little bit out of rhythm, just having to throw in there on Friday, or
a little bit, like just cleaning up the command? And again, he's got this new tool set. He's throwing the heck out of it right now. Increased size, increased velocity. And we haven't even been seeing a ton of his changeup yet, which I really like. It would be a pitch, if I was swinging a wood bat, he'd probably break a handful of my bats using that pitch, especially if you're going to be on time for 94, 96. It's got some good ride and run to it. So he's just continuing to refine it. And as I've said with him or Wyatt Queen or a handful of guys that always started, this is a great opportunity to learn how to pitch in that 5 through 9 inning range where the pressure is a little bit different. And they've already had a couple at-bats. And so now you put that together with a starter and a guy who's worked on the back end, now you know how to operate the entirety of the game. So I look at it right now like he's getting a great opportunity to learn and blend, and like he's so far away from the finished product of what he's going to be 10 years from now, and he's still going to be like making gains at that point. I see that in him with his growth mindset.
It's something with those two and him and Nelson. Obviously, they weren't piggybacking, but last year the roles were reversed. And is that something that even at this point in the season, it still takes time to get a flow of that?
Yeah, I think so. But they're so close communicating with one another. They're helping each other and sharing ideas. And again, that's exciting when you see growth like that happen. If we just kind of stay in our lane, and yesterday at practice, Door's working with position guys, Gip's working with pitchers, and so is Wong. We just basically jumbled everybody up, and we're doing a lot of one-on-ones. And so it's seeing it from a different lens. As sometimes we just get stuck in a routine. We don't see everything that's happening. And there's not a guy on our staff that doesn't have complete wisdom of the game. And so it was kind of fun, and the excitement from the coaches when practice was over, like sharing stories about the aha moments they had with guys, was really fun. Especially after, guys they didn't go get home in bed till 6:30, and then tried to rest and hit weights and you name it. So it was good to have a light day, but also a very a big, exciting day for development and connections.
I've been really impressed with Gavin's.
Well, not for me.
Always so impressive. That goes without saying. With just his, progress in his off-season quest to go the other way. I think 56% of his hits are right or right center, which is obviously a far cry.
Yeah.
How would you just assess his progress and describe how far he's come with that?
It was incredible to watch the consistency at which he went about his work, because it started in the fall and it just continued. It didn't change when people got in the stands of turning back to the pull side stuff. He kept using the big part of the field, and if you give him what he needs to work on and how to go about it, he's going to put in the time and the effort. We were sitting on the plane, and I'm watching him. I look over, and he's watching video tutorials on how to play the piano. He's continuing to look at ways to get better at it and studying. You know?
Yeah.
And he does the same thing with baseball or anything that he does. He wants to be great at it. He's going to put in the time, and he's not worried about others' opinions, because especially when you start doing that, it takes a lot of time to build slug to the opposite field, and he knows he can do it full side. And so watching that come to fruition, and even last year, he was only at this time he was at 6 home runs and 25 ribbies, and then he just went off and hit 19 and a ton more.
Opposite of his freshman year.
Yeah, but it's just growth. He's not letting the moment bother him. It's just stay the course and not listen to a lot of the noise.
Do you? You probably don't remember it in great depth, but when you went to him with his analytics after last season and showed him that discrepancy, what was your message during that meeting?
It had a lot, just sharing what we know, what the opponents know, and what it's going to take if he wants to play a long time in the big leagues. Giving him those answers now, and giving him the opportunity to then have time to go work on them before the season starts. I don't like hiding anything from the guys. If there's anything that I think a big league team's going to be looking for, or you know, what we're going to need specifically here to get better, play every day, and help us all win. And some of it is just the skill acquisition piece of it, but a lot of it's also how to like transform the other guys around you. Because when you're surrounded by great people and great athletes, you yourself have got to rise to the occasion. So it's sharing a lot of like where his maybe deficiencies were, and not saying like, hey, the other stuff's great.
Yeah.
It's like you have to keep your strengths, but how do we like grow even more? The last thing I want is a guy to come here year to year and be the same guy. I want him to develop on and off the field. So we're constantly finding ways to challenge guys, and especially when they're in a good spot. That's when you can challenge them a little bit more. You know, when it's going rough, sometimes you got to put your arm around them and then just wait. And when they're ready to learn and take on that new challenge, you can introduce it to them. You know, and that's why like sometimes the hard times you really need them to be hard, so you can make great growth. So it's, you know, you can't get too caught up in a downtime or some mishap. You got to keep looking forward, because that could have been the blessing that instead of the hardship that you were thinking it was.
And was that just you and Gip that meet him, like in your office or whatever, after the season? When you show him the stuff and
Yeah, we sit down as a staff. I mean, all of us,
season,
between strength coaches, athletic trainers, like everybody, we compile a lot of information, filter it down, and say this is the specific message that we want to give. So before these meetings, and the meetings can go anywhere, 15 to an hour.
Yeah.
But prior to that, there are several hours worth of work putting it together to make sure that we're all on the same page as what's going on. The last thing you want to do is have 6 people giving 6 different messages and then confusion and no real outlook on where I'm going. And what's the most important thing right now? This one thing could fix 5 things. Right? So just keep it simple for the guys. Yep.